Good morning and welcome to the IPPAI Regulators and Policymakers Retreat, now in its 12th edition here at the Taj Fort Aguada Beach Resort in Goa. And with me, ladies and gentlemen, is His Excellency India's Ambassador to the Kingdom of Bhutan, Shri Pavan Varma ji. Sir, welcome to the retreat. Sir, we'd like to know, you are a celebrated author as well as an Indian civil servant who's made a mark for himself, in the literary world, in the world of analysis of what being Indian means. One of your most famous works is The Great Indian Middle Class, which was published in the 1990s. And we'd like to understand from you, sir, what has been your experience of the last decade or so, seeing the changes in Indian society, in the Indian economy, and indeed in the great Indian middle class?
Well, if you ask me what's the single biggest imperative that I have found visible in its absence in the last decade, is governance. Governance in its broadest sense. The great paradox of India is that while there are a great many issues which are naturally there to arise in a country of this size and complexity with over 1 billion people, there is one overriding imperative, and that is governance. This country is one of the only countries where, while it has aspirations to become a superpower, has too many people, unacceptably large number of people who live in abject poverty. There are too many people who are illiterate. There are too many people who are deprived of even primary health care. There is a whole agenda waiting to be implemented to carry India's growth story forward. The only answer to that, which is an answer to the real needs of India, is governance. Of course, there are other issues of importance. One of them these days is corruption. And corruption needs to be tackled firmly through greater transparency and accountability. And on that account, the rise in the last 10 years of a more conscious middle class, a middle class that is willing to mobilize itself for what are publicly desirable goals. That is important. But you cannot have a nation at the threshold of takeoff like India eschew anymore the imperative of governance. And if you ask me what has emerged in the last 10 years, over and above all our other problems, the one issue which government and people need to focus upon, it's governance.
Sir, given the fact that we've completed around 60 years since independence, right, and we are celebrated to be the world's largest democracy, and we have democratic values so enshrined. You could have seen the experience of the emergency, where the Indian voter has been found time and again to be very well connected with larger issues and has voted accordingly. Why do you think, sir, this governance problem still exists? Do we get the leaders we deserve?
No, I think there's no shortage of talent. But let us accept that the democratic framework has fundamentally changed in the sense that you are in an era of coalitions. And in an era of coalitions, there is a certain system by which you get consensus in order to move ahead. But in order for that consensus, there needs vision. And there needs the vision of a certain finite timeline. You cannot have a vision in a void in terms of end results. There are burning problems which exist today. Those need to be tackled. There is a democratically elected government, and democracy is a great asset to this country because it provides, in a situation of the most unacceptable disparities economically and otherwise, a safety valve for the people to ventilate their grievances, and the fact that you can be thrown out every 5 years for not delivering. So it's not as if you have an infinite timeline. You have a timeline and you need to deliver, and the people are looking towards it. The democratic framework provides you the right framework with all its problems. Because I know of societies and governments where this is absent, and you are actually sitting on a time bomb as to when the energies which have been stifled and suppressed in the absence of a democratic environment will overwhelm you. But in India, you have that advantage. Now we have to get our act together and deliver.
So, what do you think of this new trend in the last year or so of people from civil society, notable Mr. Hazare and later on Guru Ramdev? Uh, the kind of pressure that they're exerting. Some people believe that this is wrong. They are not elected representatives, and they should, win the mandate of the people before they can come and make such sweeping changes. Other people feel that the time has come in any case, and they're espousing the right cause. So, how do we ensure that we have reforms of such sweeping nature uh, implemented across India?
Well, I don't want to speak on political issues, but as a citizen, I have a point of view. And that point of view is that where is the contradiction? In a democracy, you have established institutions of democracy, namely and very broadly the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. They have a mandate, a sanction by the constitution to play a role. Beyond that, again as a reflection of that same democracy, you have the right of people who in some ways may be dissatisfied with or have an agenda which is different to what the government is implementing or not implementing, to raise their voice. Both are valid. It is only when one either denies the right of the other that you have a crisis. The civil society movements, I don't care who they represent necessarily. Civil society movements, so long as they are articulating a publicly desirable goal, have the right to have their voice. The government is obliged to listen. Similarly, the civil society movements must, with an open and eclectic mind, listen to the government in terms of its compulsions. Neither should encroach on each other's territory. For instance, there is no excuse for the civil society movements in some manner to erode the established institutions of the democratic polity as sanctioned by the Constitution of India. Similarly, there is no reason for those a part of the established institutions to question the right for people to ask and to ask for more. But this existence of two so-called polarities must have a dialogue in a civilized manner, not for short-term partisan ends, not for tokenism, not for making a point across even though there is no intention to reach the desired goal. The idea is to have a dialogue so that we move forward. And ultimately, moving forward is again linked to governance. You cannot now anymore put governance on the back